What happens when Hollywood's golden ideal of empowerment collides with the raw heat of live television? When conviction meets confrontation and cameras refuse to blink. That's exactly what unfolded the moment Brie Larson sat across from Sunny Hostin on The View. The stage was set for a routine discussion about women in film. But what erupted instead was a fiery clash that none of the hosts or the audience could have anticipated. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button to show Abe Buzzer Stories, and don't forget to like and comment below. You'll want to stay tuned for more jaw-dropping moments like this one, where the truth doesn't just come out, it erupts. It started as any other segment. The lights were bright, the audience clapping in that practiced rhythm of morning TV. Brie Larson, polished and calm in a tailored cream suit, smiled as she took her seat. She was there to promote her latest film, a feminist-driven sci-fi epic about breaking systems and redefining power. Across from her, Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her note cards stacked neatly, eyes sharp and unflinching. There was respect at first, two intelligent women ready to discuss the changing face of Hollywood. But just beneath the surface, tension simmered. The conversation began smoothly. Brie spoke passionately about the importance of representation, about how Hollywood still had a long way to go in terms of giving women, especially women of color, leading opportunities. The audience nodded, applauding softly. Sunny agreed, but then her tone shifted, subtle at first, but unmistakable. "You've been one of the loudest voices on inclusion," Sunny said, her voice measured. "But some critics say your activism feels performative. They claim Hollywood's elite talk about equality, but live in a bubble that doesn't reflect real-world struggles. How do you respond to that?" For a moment, Brie's smile froze. The studio air changed, something electric, tense, alive. She adjusted in her chair, eyes narrowing slightly, her voice still even but tinged with steel. "I think it's easy to call something performative when you're not the one fighting for it," she replied. "I've used my platform to open doors that were closed for years. I don't think that's performative. I think that's progress." Sunny nodded but didn't back off. "But do you think Hollywood as an institution sometimes mistakes awards and speeches for real action? I mean, we see a lot of statements, but not much change. People say it's convenient activism, beautiful words with little sacrifice." The audience murmured. Brie's expression shifted. Her eyes flicked toward the camera, then back to Sunny. She could feel the trap tightening. She wasn't just defending her beliefs, she was defending her integrity, live in front of millions. "I think you're underestimating the work being done behind the scenes," Brie said, her tone firmer now. "I'm not interested in optics, Sunny. I'm interested in change, and sometimes change doesn't look loud. It looks uncomfortable." Whoopi Goldberg, sitting to Sunny's left, sensed the rising heat and interjected lightly. All right. Let's not burn the table down just yet," she quipped, earning a nervous laugh from the audience. But Sunny didn't let go. "Uncomfortable," she repeated, her voice calm but cutting. "That's an interesting word, because for many actors outside that Hollywood circle, it's not just uncomfortable, it's impossible. They say Hollywood preaches progress while still rewarding the same few people over and over." Brie leaned forward now. "And what do you suggest, Sunny? That because I've succeeded, my voice doesn't count? That I should apologize for having a platform?" Sunny held her ground. "No, I'm suggesting that the platform should be used to lift others without turning it into a personal brand. There's a difference between advocacy and self-promotion." That line landed like a slap. The crowd let out a low collective, "Oh," sensing the friction explode into open fire. Brie blinked slowly, her jaw tightening. "That's unfair," she said, quieter now, but with a tremor of anger in her voice. "You don't know what I do behind the scenes. You don't see the meetings, the projects, the work. You just see headlines and decide who's authentic enough for you." Sunny raised an eyebrow. "I don't decide anything, Brie. The audience does. The people do." The tension was palpable. Even Joy Behar shifted uncomfortably in her chair, glancing toward the producers off stage. The air conditioning hummed louder than it should. Brie's breathing deepened. She looked toward the audience, half of them watching with rapt attention, others whispering, unsure whether to cheer or cringe. Then, with the faintest shake of her head, she said, "It's sad that women tearing down other women still makes good TV." That line silenced the room. Even Sunny froze for a heartbeat, thrown off by the accusation. Then she leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. "This isn't about tearing down," she replied. "It's about accountability." For a long moment, neither spoke. The audience didn't clap. No one laughed. The camera lingered on Brie's expression, Anger, hurt, maybe even regret, all flickering in her eyes like a storm behind glass. Then Whoopi spoke softly, trying to reset the energy. "All right, we're going to take a quick break," she said. But even she couldn't mask the discomfort. As the red recording light blinked off, Brie exhaled, turning away slightly, her mic still hot enough to catch the words under her breath. "I don't have to take this." And that's where the story stopped being an interview and started becoming a confrontation. Because when the cameras came back on, Brie Larson wasn't the same calm advocate who'd sat down 20 minutes earlier. She was ready for battle. When the show returned from commercial, the audience clapped hesitantly, like they weren't sure if they were supposed to. The camera cut back to the table. The host smiled, but the smiles were thin, fragile things stretched over unease. And Brie Larson, now sitting a little straighter, wasn't smiling at all. Her eyes were distant, her composure sharper, like someone who'd just decided she wasn't going to be polite anymore. Whoopi tried to warm the mood, her trademark humor flickering through. "All right, folks. Welcome back to The View. We're here with the incredible Brie Larson talking about her new movie and, the world of Hollywood." She chuckled lightly, but her glance toward Sonny was unmistakable, a silent plea to tread carefully. But Sonny Hostin didn't tread. She leaned in, her voice smooth but with an unmistakable edge. "Before the break, Brie made an important point about women supporting women," she said, looking directly at her guest. "And I think that's something we should dig into a little deeper, because some would say Hollywood says that, but doesn't do it." Brie tilted her head slightly. "And some would say this kind of conversation is exactly why it's so hard for women in this industry to stand together." The audience let out a nervous ripple of applause. Brie's tone wasn't defensive anymore. It was deliberate, pointed. She wasn't reacting now, she was responding. Sonny nodded slowly. "But don't you think we have to be honest? If Hollywood keeps patting itself on the back for progress that's not real, then aren't we part of the problem?" Brie leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "You want honesty? Okay. Hollywood's not perfect, but I'm not here to apologize for trying. I'm here to talk about how we move forward. What we shouldn't do is sit here and tear down people who are actually doing the work." Her voice had a tremor to it. Not weakness, but intensity, the kind that makes every syllable feel heavier. Sonny smiled just slightly. "I'm not tearing you down, Brie. I'm holding you to the same standard you hold others to. You're one of the faces of Hollywood change. But do you really think the system's changing? Or is it just evolving to make people like you look good?" Gasps rippled through the audience. Even Joy Behar's eyebrows shot up. Brie froze for a second. Her lips parted in disbelief. Wow," she said, shaking her head. "So that's what this is. You invited me here to accuse me of pretending, to turn an honest discussion into an ambush." Sonny opened her mouth to respond, but Brie's voice cut through, louder now. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this industry. The pressure, the backlash, the labels. I fought every day to be taken seriously, not as a woman, not as a celebrity, but as a person. And you're sitting here implying I'm part of the problem because I've had success." The studio was completely still. The sound of Brie's breathing, the faint rustle of her mic, every detail felt magnified. Whoopi stepped in again, her voice softer, trying to ease the flames. Ladies, hold on. Now, let's bring this back a bit. We all know Hollywood has its issues." But Brie wasn't hearing it. She looked directly into the camera. "You know what's funny?" she said, voice trembling between anger and heartbreak. "When women show emotion, we're called dramatic. When we speak up, we're called difficult. But when we stay quiet, we're complicit. So which is it, Sonny? What kind of woman am I supposed to be to make everyone comfortable?" Applause erupted from sections of the audience. Real, raw, divided applause. Half cheering her courage, half caught in the awkwardness of it all. Sonny took a breath, her calm composure starting to crack. This isn't about making anyone comfortable. It's about facing hard truths. And one of those truths is that Hollywood loves to talk about equality, but it still runs on exclusivity. And sometimes even the most well-intentioned voices end up reinforcing it. Brie gave a small, incredulous laugh. "You're unbelievable," she muttered under her breath. "Excuse me?" Sonny said sharply. Brie looked back at her. "You heard me. You talk about accountability, but you're sitting here turning activism into a spectacle. This isn't journalism, it's performance." The crowd gasped again. Whoopi leaned back, wide-eyed, muttering something to Joy. Sarah Haynes reached for her water, pretending not to exist. Sonny's expression hardened. "Performance? I've been fighting for representation long before it was fashionable, Brie. And yet here you are, Brie said, gesturing between them, tearing down another woman on live television because it makes for good ratings. Joy tried to jump in. All right, let's calm down. But Brie wasn't finished. You know what? This is exactly what's wrong, she continued. We make these shows where women come together to empower each other, but the second someone doesn't fit your narrative, you turn them into a villain. The room was electric now. Every pair of eyes locked on her. Sunny leaned in, her voice low and tight. Brie, nobody's making you a villain. You're doing that yourself. Brie's lips parted, her breath catching. The words hit her like a slap, and for a fleeting moment, pain flickered in her eyes. She turned slightly toward the audience, as though grounding herself against the tide of judgment. Then she spoke softly, so softly it almost didn't register at first. Maybe I don't need to be part of this circus anymore. The crowd stirred. Joy looked panicked. Whoopi frowned. Sunny opened her mouth, but before anyone could speak, Brie pushed back her chair. The metallic scrape echoed across the studio. The cameras kept rolling. She stood, her movement slow but deliberate, gathering her notes and mic. Thank you for having me, she said, voice trembling with emotion. I thought we were going to have a real conversation. I was wrong. Whoopi reached out gently. Brie, hold on. Don't. But Brie was already walking away, past the host table, past the stunned faces, toward the offstage exit. The audience gasped, some standing instinctively, phones lifting, trying to capture the moment. Sunny watched her go, lips pressed together, a storm of regret and pride flickering in her expression. As the studio lights dimmed for an emergency cut to commercial, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly. Brie Larson, Oscar winner, activist icon, had just walked off the view. Backstage, the air was thick with confusion, the kind that hums like static after lightning strikes. The show had cut to commercial, but the tension didn't fade with the cameras. Producers rushed across the floor, their earpieces buzzing with chaos. The studio audience whispered in disbelief, replaying the moment over and over, Brie Larson's words, her sudden exit, the stunned silence that followed. In the green room, a small cluster of staff members huddled around monitors showing the replay. One whispered, "She really walked out." Another muttered, "This is going viral already." Phones lit up like wildfire. Tweets, clips, reactions spreading before the dust even settled. Brie stood just beyond the curtain, out of sight from the audience. Her face was pale, her breath uneven. One of the assistants approached, hesitant. "Brie, are you okay?" "We can." "I'm fine," she interrupted, her voice steady but cold. "I just didn't come here to be humiliated." Her publicist arrived seconds later, face tight with that familiar mix of panic and damage control. "They're cutting to break again," he said quickly. "We can try to smooth it out. Maybe have you go back on." Brie turned sharply. "Go back on after that?" "No. I'm done." She exhaled, rubbing her forehead. "This was supposed to be about my film. About empowerment. Instead, I walked into a firing squad." Meanwhile, on stage, the hosts were gathered in quiet crisis. Joy Behar leaned over the table, muttering, "We've had walk-offs before, but this one's going to explode online." Whoopi sighed, shaking her head. "We didn't need it to go there. It was supposed to be a conversation, not a showdown." Sunny Hostin sat silent. Her gaze was fixed on the empty seat Brie had left behind. For all her confidence, there was something uneasy in her expression, something between guilt and defiance. "I didn't mean for her to leave," she said quietly. "I just asked the question people were already thinking." "Yeah," Joy said under her breath. "But sometimes people don't want to hear the truth when the cameras are on." The director's voice crackled through the studio speakers. "We're live again in 30. Hosts, do not mention the walk-off directly. Just move on." But moving on was impossible. The tension had taken root, and everyone could feel it. When they returned on air, Whoopi tried to lighten the atmosphere, cracking a joke about Hollywood drama and live TV. But her voice lacked its usual spark. Viewers at home could see it, the awkward glances, the ghost of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Meanwhile, social media was already ablaze. Clips of Brie standing, her voice trembling with frustration. Those few seconds were looping endlessly. One tweet read, "Brie Larson walking out of the view after clashing with Sunny Hostin. This is wild." Another, "Sunny just said what everyone's been thinking about Hollywood hypocrisy." And then, "Women tearing each other down on national TV. Sad to watch." Within an hour, hashtags began trending, Hashtag Brie walks off, hashtag Sunnyverb, hashtag the meltdown. Commentators jumped in. Entertainment blogs rewound the footage frame by frame, dissecting tone, expression, even posture. Some praised Brie for standing up for herself. Others accused her of fragility and arrogance. In her dressing room, Brie scrolled through her phone in silence. Every new post cut deeper. Her publicist sat nearby, murmuring, "We can issue a statement," something calm, dignified. Maybe say it was a passionate discussion that got heated. Brie looked up, eyes dark. "No, that's what they always say, passionate. Like it's a code word for emotional woman." The assistant hesitated. "Then what do you want to say?" Brie didn't answer right away. She stared at her reflection. The perfect makeup, the carefully styled hair, the calm face that no longer felt like hers. Finally, she whispered, "Nothing. I'll let them talk. They always do." Across the hall, Sunny sat in her own quiet storm. Her phone buzzed nonstop with texts and notifications. Her producer had just told her the clip was already trending globally. She opened her social feed and saw herself on screen, frozen mid-sentence, caught in a moment that now defined her. One comment stung. "Sunny Hostin just bullied Brie Larson live. Disgusting." Another countered. "Sunny asked the tough questions. Brie just couldn't handle it." The lines were drawn. Sarah Haynes knocked softly on Sunny's door, peeking in. "You okay?" Sunny looked up, expression unreadable. "Do I look okay? You didn't mean for it to go that far." Sunny sighed. "No, but maybe it needed to." Sarah frowned. "At what cost?" Sunny didn't answer. Outside the studio, reporters were already gathering. Paparazzi flashes lit the sidewalk as Brie's car pulled up to the back exit. She stepped in quickly, ducking her head, but the cameras caught everything. The clenched jaw, the flicker of anger, the exhaustion. Inside the car, her driver asked softly, "Back to the hotel, Miss Larson?" She nodded, staring out the tinted window as the studio vanished behind her. Back to somewhere quiet, but quiet wouldn't come. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Brie Larson walks out of the View after explosive debate. Sunny Hostin and Brie Larson clash over Hollywood hypocrisy. The View meltdown. Tension boils over in live interview. Pundits replayed the segment endlessly. Morning radio hosts joked about Brie's temper. Late-night comedians turned it into punchlines. Fans fought bitterly online. Hashtag Team Brie versus hashtag Team Sunny. Each side rewriting the story in real time. Brie's film publicist called her early that afternoon. "We've had to cancel your Good Morning America spot. They don't want more controversy this week." Brie sat at the edge of her hotel bed, the phone pressed to her ear, silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Maybe that's for the best. She scrolled through the endless sea of comments, her thumb pausing on one that read, "Brie stood up for herself." She didn't deserve that treatment. It made her eyes sting. In the quiet of that hotel room, she finally allowed herself to feel it, the humiliation, the anger, the sadness. She had gone on that show to talk about empowerment. And somehow, it had all twisted into a spectacle about pride and ego. For a long moment, she sat in silence, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor. Then slowly, she whispered to herself, "They'll forget. They always do." But she was wrong. This wasn't fading. The world wasn't ready to move on. By the next morning, the View studio was buzzing with a strange, nervous quiet, the kind that follows a storm everyone saw coming, but no one stopped. Producers moved briskly, phones pressed to their ears, voices low. The control room screens still glowed with headlines about the walk-off, looping the clip that had already defined the week. Brie Larson's chair sat empty, a symbol, a ghost. The show opened that day with Whoopi Goldberg addressing the elephant in the room. She sighed, looking straight into the camera. "So unless you've been living under a rock," she began, "you've probably seen what happened yesterday. Things got heated. Emotions ran high. We want to say we're human. Sometimes conversations don't go the way anyone expects." The audience gave a polite, uncertain applause. Joy Behar smiled thinly, adding, "It's live TV, folks. If you want scripted peace, go watch a Hallmark movie." A few chuckles scattered across the crowd, but no one missed the edge beneath her words. Sunny Hostin sat quietly, hands folded, her expression poised but distant. She hadn't slept. The weight of public scrutiny had arrived in full force, tweets, op-eds, and think pieces dissecting her tone, her questions, her motives. Even her phone had become a weapon, vibrating with criticism and support in equal measure. Whoopi continued gently. Brie is a talented actor and an outspoken advocate. We've had strong opinions at this table before, and we'll have them again. That's part of what makes this show what it is. But even as she spoke, cameras cut to Sunny because the internet had already made her the face of the controversy. That same morning, Good Morning America played a montage of the walk-off with the caption, "Brie Larson's exit sparks debate, empowerment or ego." The hosts analyzed it like a national event. One said Brie had been emotionally cornered. Another said she was too sensitive for tough questions. Hollywood insiders began to weigh in. Actress Jamila Jamil tweeted, "Women in media are expected to smile while being dissected. Brie did what many wish they could. She walked, but others weren't so kind." A director who'd worked with Brie years ago wrote, "She's passionate, but not always open to criticism." Maybe this was a wake-up call. Even Sunny's colleagues in journalism had opinions. One prominent columnist wrote, "Sunny host held Brie accountable in a space that usually pampers celebrities." The reaction proves how uncomfortable truth can be. In her hotel room, Brie scrolled through it all with a detached expression. She wasn't crying anymore, just tired. Every ping of a new notification felt like a hammer against her ribs. Her publicist entered quietly, holding a printed draft. "We've prepared a short statement if you're ready." Brie didn't even glance at it. "Let me guess," she murmured. "Something about mutual respect and differing perspectives." He hesitated. "Something like that." Brie sighed. "I'm not saying that. Not this time." She stood, walking to the window. The city glowed outside, distant and different. "I'm not angry anymore," she said softly. "Just disappointed. Not in Sunny. Not in the show. In the system that turns everything into a spectacle. You can't talk about real issues without someone asking if it's a PR move." Her publicist watched her quietly, unsure whether to comfort or retreat. Later that afternoon, Brie broke her silence. Not through a publicist, not on a red carpet, but directly to her followers. On Instagram, she posted a single photo, the empty stage of The View, taken before the show had started. Her caption read, "Sometimes silence speaks louder than debate. I stand for women's voices always, but I won't let mine be twisted for entertainment. No hate, just boundaries." Within minutes, the post had over 2 million likes. Celebrities commented words of support, Emma Stone, Natalie Portman, even Viola Davis, each echoing the same sentiment. "We stand with you." But Sunny host saw it differently. That evening on CNN, she appeared for a short interview. Sitting across from Anderson Cooper, she looked composed, if slightly weary. "Do you regret what happened with Brie Larson?" he asked gently. Sunny exhaled. "Regret? Maybe how it played out, but not the question itself. I asked what I believed needed to be asked. That's what we do on The View. We challenge. We provoke conversation. But I never wanted her to feel attacked. I think we were both coming from passion, and passion can collide." Anderson nodded. "The internet seems divided. Some say you were too harsh. Others say Brie overreacted." Sunny smiled faintly. "That's the world we live in now. People pick sides before they understand the story. Maybe that's what hurts the most." For a brief moment, her voice faltered, and she added softly, "I have a daughter. I want her to grow up seeing women debate without it turning into destruction. Maybe we both could have done better." That line went viral, too. By the week's end, the headlines had shifted. What began as outrage turned into reflection. Editorials debated the View effect, examining how media turns meaningful discussions into emotional battlegrounds. Brie's quiet dignity and Sunny's later empathy painted a complicated picture. Two women caught in the gears of a system that thrives on conflict. Behind the noise, though, something real lingered. Clips from the show were being used in college communication classes. Activists began hosting live streams about how women talk to women in power. And quietly, away from cameras, Brie and Sunny both reached out through their teams. Not for a reunion, but for a conversation, a private one. No audience, no producers, just two people trying to understand each other again. A week later, paparazzi caught a photo of them leaving a cafe in Manhattan. No smiles, but no anger either. The caption under the photo read, "Brie Larson and Sunny host, civil closure." Neither confirmed what they talked about, but insiders said it was calm, honest, necessary. Months later, when Brie's film premiered, she walked the red carpet in a striking white gown. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes exploded around her. But when asked about The View, she smiled slightly and said, "Sometimes you have to walk away to find your balance again." The crowd applauded, not because it was scandalous, but because it was human. The View, of course, continued. But that one episode lived on, in viral clips, think pieces, and memory. A cautionary tale about passion, perception, and the fine line between truth and theater. And somewhere in that storm of applause and criticism, Brie Larson reclaimed something quietly powerful, her voice. So, what do you think? Was Brie right to walk off? Or did Sunny just ask the hard questions no one else dared to? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion might just change how this story is remembered. And if you want more shocking, emotional, and cinematic stories like this one, subscribe to Shoaib Buzzer Stories right now. Because next time, the confrontation might be even bigger, and you won't want to miss it.